Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and a very good evening. Welcome to Live Real Talk. It is the 6th of October, which is equivalent to the 10th of Rabiul Awal in the lunar calendar. My name is Faisal Kassim and this is the Live Real Talk. On the 3rd of October, the President, William Samuel Ruto, came out, or gave a statement rather, lifting the ban on GMOs, a ban that was put in place on the 8th of November 2012, of course, after a task force report. This has, of course, spurred various reactions, mixed reactions from different quarters, because people are looking at quote-unquote potential lives versus quote-unquote potential livelihoods, and that forms the basis of our conversation this evening. But again, before I introduce to you my amazing panel this evening, let's have a look at what the civil society organizations this morning had to say on the subject matter. Aban, take it away.
We are greatly disappointed by the Cabinet's decision to lift the ban on the cultivation and importation of genetically modified organisms into Kenya, which was put in place 10 years ago. The ban was put in place through a Cabinet memo on 8 November 2012 following concerns over the safety of genetically engineered foods, and for the last 10 years, there has been no need to import or allow open cultivation of genetically engineered foods, as the country has been able to make do without GMOs. Our farmers have continued to produce the bulk of maize, Kenya's maize supply, and the deficit, which is about 10 to 15 million bags a year, has been supplemented through trade with our neighboring countries, mainly Tanzania and Uganda, and that maize is GMO-free. We note that this decision comes when more than 4.2 million Kenyans are facing severe hunger and high food prices due to the ongoing drought, the effects of the Russia-Ukraine war, and the challenges we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 50% of the population are vulnerable to a less visible struggle, which is access to food, and mostly in the urban areas due to the country's hard economic situation, which is equally significant but mostly ignored.
Thanks so much, Abba Shehemi, for that news bite from the earlier on press this morning from the civil society organization. Now, moving on to my panelists this evening, I'm joined by Ruth Kinyanjui, who is an economist by profession and a business advisor, of course, representing the livelihoods in the game.
Yes. Yes.
Karibu sana, Ruth Kinyanjui.
Thank you.
Honored to have you here. And of course, our professor, our mentor, my chairman, Professor Mohamed Karama, who is coming from a health background, former director, CEO at the Kenya Medical Research Institute.
Senior research.
Yes, of course, senior researcher, that was unofficial.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks so much, Professor Mohamed Karama and Ruth Kinyanjui, for making time for us this evening. Karibuni sana. I'm going to start with you, Ruth Kinyanjui. When that statement came out on Monday morning from President William Samuel Ruto after meeting the cabinet, how did you feel? What was the reaction?
First, when you listen, this is a conversation that has been going for a very long time. Mm-hmm. As you can see, the civil society is referring to something that was done or was concluded in November 2012, which is a long time, meaning even before that date, the conversation was still on, or the research was still being done. So meaning now, we are almost 10 years later, actually, and it has been allowed. What has changed in those 10 years? What I'll tell you for sure is the advancement in technology. Even if you look at the last 10 years, even in other areas of the economy, everything is changing. So there's an opportunity that something has happened. It's just that in the last cabinet meeting, is just that this report has not been made public. But the docket or this biodiversity committee has all the information. And for me, it took me back, because for those last 10 years, and even another 10 years back, which is around 20 years, in this country, we have seen the diminishing of especially the research when it comes to some of these things. I wish I was hearing that this research was based from Egerton University, which was one of the university that was doing some of these big things. I'm happy Prof is here from Cambridge. Or it will be one of the university, because right now, actually, if you look at the last 10 years, we have so many universities that has come up. Tell me if you have had one from agriculture, or that is basing most of its stuff from
Most of them
agriculture.
are going on green energy,
Yeah.
technology. And,
Yeah,
and
we know there's
such.
KEMRI, there's KARI and other institutions of the government, but clearly there has not been a lot of development in the agricultural sector. That is why we've had, in those many years or 20 years.
Which was once the backbone of our economy.
Yes, actually it's supposed to be. And even from a budget perspective, and this is something I want to highlight, agriculture is one of the things that is receiving some of the very minimal allocation from a budgetary perspective.
So generally, how was you feeling when you had this?
First, I was like, it's going to open up to jobs market, especially for most young Kenyans, whether it's from a farming perspective, subsistency, animal husbandry, or even research.
So you're looking at, of course, expanding the economy.
Expanding the
food
economy.
security.
Yes.
The food sector.
Yes, 35% of the youth in this country are unemployed.
Wow. That's a huge number.
And every now it's September, we have opened up to the long dry season. Up to next year, Feb, all the stories you're going to be hearing is up true. Kana people are dying, donkeys are dying. Who wants to hear such news?
Nobody.
Nobody.
True.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ruth.
Yeah.
Prof, I mean, I'm going to ask you the same question, coming from a science background, coming from a medical background, to be specific. How did you receive this news from the government?
I sympathize with the government because it's a decision that was difficult to make. Understanding the implications of genetically modified organisms in terms of accepting them into our country with a poor understanding of the majority of people as to what it entails, and also considering that we have had 4 seasons with inadequate rainfall, and we are facing the 5th one that we are still expecting.
The OND, October, November, December.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are likely to get into problems. But I felt like it is it's a heavy decision to make, but sometimes we need to make such decisions considering our local situations. We are aware that there are about 8 countries in Africa now are using GMOs, genetically modified organisms, as food. And considering the benefits that come in, it is important that the government, with the clearing of the ban on these foods, must put very strong mechanism, that's my feeling, to control the utilization of these GMOs in areas where we can do well in agriculture. They do not need to introduce them. But one of the challenges with the GMOs is that once you introduce them into the country, it is very difficult to control where these crops go. Yes, so I felt like there is need we look to the government to ensure there is very strong mechanisms of control to ensure that the areas that can do without GMOs are left to continue in the traditional way without contaminating the grounds and so on with GMOs.
Prof, you're looking at, and even Ruth, you're looking at big countries like Argentina, India, Canada, China, to mention but a few, all these countries that have adopted GMO. And these are developed countries. If anything, Kenya and many other third world and even second world countries are aspiring to be like them. Country like Argentina, for example, the GMO usage goes up as high as 64.41%. India, with a very high population, they're looking at 7.39%. Canada, which is considered to be a first world country, we're looking at least 25.74%. Right? So these are countries that have accepted GMO, right? Looking at our situation in the country, Prof and Ruth, as you've rightly put it, Ruth, we don't have figures. What guarantee do we have, for example, I mean, based on your experience and your interactions, what guarantees do we have that allowing GMOs in this country is going to affect the life or the livelihood of the ordinary Kenyan?
I think first I'll just quote a global study that has been done, especially in the study of GMOs. First, it has been confirmed that actually the plant, the genetics of plant will have very small effect, or even none, to human or animal health. And actually, even if it does, a lot of these things are destroyed, especially during cooking, and they never go beyond the large intestines. Those are studies that have been done globally, meaning there can be accommodation. I believe the government has taken almost 20 years to come to a conclusion of this study, and they have a basis. When I look at the 4 million people that are starving right now, and maybe the number might go high. When I look at that, what percentage of that is our population? Yeah, that is almost at 20%, which is very high. And we are not mentioning the cost of living, which is going very high. Actually, just this week we heard that the packet of unga is going to go to 3 times the way it was earlier in the beginning of the year.
Possibly 300 shillings.
Yeah. It was 100 shilling or 99 shillings earlier in the year. So, meaning the cost of living is going 3, 4, 5 times. You know, where will a common mwananchi be able to afford that? I know during the task for the civil society was saying that we import our maize locally, but we've heard that in the recent past there has been, because the maize has not been available, they have gone far to even import from other countries beyond East Africa. Why are they doing that? Because the common mwananchi has no staple food. So, as Professor has said, can these things be done under regulation? The government has the mechanism. The government has the money. The government may be deliberately or not, based on the focus area or the manifestos that each government can, because the first study we see that it was done during the Kibaki government. Now, during the next government or Huru's government, we have seen conclusion, because basically these are conclusion. This is that government that has come in, and it's implementing. So it should be implementing something that is really workable, but the government has not given agriculture the last 20 years a lot of focus. Can that be done? Can a lot of money be slotted to technology, a lot of research, and these things can give farmers a basis and regulation around it. If there's the focus areas of many sectors in Kenya, they are regulated, and the regulators normally ensure that there is a lot of fair business. So can we have this? The other thing, of course, we have seen the importation, and also the allowing. Can we have the common mwananchi benefit out of this, so that the common farmer, we've had the issue of Ukraine. We cannot continue crying over Ukraine right now. We know our farmers in areas or in places that grow, say, for example, wheat. They haven't been growing optimally, or like they used to do a few years ago. The same case to maize. Go to places like Italy, where maize used to grow. People no longer have that zeal, because the agricultural sector has been messed up. Yeah, pesticide, bad fertilizers, and soil topology. So you think with the
lifting of GMO is likely to revive the industry?
I think this government should give the focus to this agricultural sector.
Agricultural sector. Interesting. Thank you so much, Ruth, for that. Prof, you've mentioned about regulation, of which it's a very good thing. The president himself has a PhD on plant ecology. I mean, he's leading the administration from a science point of view in terms of the highest academic qualification. Plant ecology. Prof, is there a conclusive research done on how these genetically modified crops have possible effects to the human body and the human anatomy in general? Because, I mean, so far, all we've been hearing was just fuss around this whole topic. But again, we've rarely had facts around it. If anything, the facts we're looking at is even the first world countries that I mentioned earlier: USA, Canada, China, India, Argentina, Brazil, to mention but a few. They've all adopted it, and actually in large numbers. USA goes up to 70% in some instances. So is there a conclusive research? Is there a direct correlation between the genetically modified crops with the human anatomy?
Yes, some studies have been done, and like the famous study on the fact that cancer was associated to some of the GMO foods. And it has been up and down, accepted, rejected, accepted, rejected. But there are advantages on these GMOs in terms of technology. First of all, one of the challenges, and first of all to support my colleague, is that, you know, agriculture was competing with tourism in this country as the foreign currency earner for this country. It's not anymore now because of the climate change, because of the many other factors. When we use GMOs, there are some advantages. One is that in the modification of the plants, they introduce some bacteria into these seeds that help in controlling pests, for example. They also introduce crops that are resistant to extreme weather conditions, and that they take a shorter time to mature and be able to be consumed by people. So there are advantages. However, the few disadvantages that may occur is that the items that are used to be added or to modify the seeds could have some reactions to a few individuals, like allergies and so on. And sometimes also the bacteria that are added, and this is where we're talking about controls. If there is no proper control and the wrong things are added, that means it will affect the human in a way. And this is where we are saying we need to support the use of GMOs, but in a very controlled way.
On a regulated system.
A regulated system with regular monitoring. And one of the challenges we have in this country is we don't have mechanisms for regular, and this is what is a requirement for GMOs, that we have to ensure that whatever modification is done, both for animals and plants, because it's both, that it should be useful to the humans, so that the risk of any health effects to the humans is reduced to minimum. But given our situation in the country, that we have 4 million, and it's going to 5 million now, if nothing much is being done. And trying to get, there are few people who are just extremely vulnerable. We cannot rely on importations of foods. We need to look at an advanced system of how we can't keep on relying on requesting for support from outside. We also need internal support. So there is no specific conclusive something that we say it will cause this, but it will be on a different, people will react differently to some of these, and that is where we need to minimize this.
And probabilities, for lack of
yes, yes.
And these probabilities that you mentioned, for example, allergies, this is something that were happening even when the GMO ban was being implemented, right?
Yes, it is true. So people are certain people are allergic to certain plants. Naturally. And they react even now without GMOs.
Yeah.
Cancers, there are many other causes of cancer in this country. The plastics, now the global warming, and the dilapidation of the ozone layer. We have many other sources.
So basically there's no study that maybe can say you allow GMO into this country, then you're going to have a rise of this particular disease by this percentage, or the health system is going to be affected by this percentage. So
what I'm saying is we need to back up this process with a lot of research, organized research, properly for evidence-based follow-up. If if it is useful, we continue. And that is what we are talking about, regulation and monitoring.
Of the system,
yes,
and the GMOs,
yes,
when it's being implemented.
Yes, yes.
I mean, it is 37 minutes past 8 p.m., Prof. and Ruth, if you allow me to tafute mshahara kidogo. Sure. We just pay our bills. 37 minutes past 8 p.m. right here on Horizon TV Live Real Talk. I mean, if anything, forget the jargons, forget the big words that are being used. Here it is clearly educating, breaking down, separating the wheat from the chaff. But again, right now we're going to go on a very short break. When we're back, we're going to start with your views on the streets of Nairobi today in regards to the subject matter, and then you continue with our conversation right here in the studio. Aban?
About this issue of GMO, I think it is going to help our country so much achieve a certain milestone, because you understand the current situation concerning the food situation in the country is not that good.
GMO was here sometimes back and was banned. We want to know exactly what was rectified to take it back. Ni nini imefanywa GMO ikarudishwa na ilikuwa imebaniwa? Imerekebishwa nini? That is what we want to know. Imekuwa nzuri na nini na ilikuwa mbaya na nini by then?
Yes, we can say we bring in GMO seeds, GMO food, GMO that, but the main effect, unless we take care of our environment, our forests, okay, then I don't see, because what is causing all this, what is causing food shortage in the country is being caused by lack of rains. That's all. It's not about which seeds we have or which seeds we don't have, either genetically modified or the standard ones.
As you understand, the current situation, maybe let's say in northern parts of our country, not only northern parts of our country, but many counties are facing hunger as we speak. People are dying. We just saw the other day on the television. And I think with this kind of approach, actually, we are going to produce enough food to feed our people, and as well meet our economic demands.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation. Verse of the day.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Thanks so much, Abashihemi. Welcome back, and thanks so much for keeping it live, Real Talk. And as I promised you, as I had promised you, before we went on a break, is that when we come back, we will start with what were your views on the streets of Nairobi earlier on today in regards to the subject matter that we're talking about tonight. Aban?
About this issue of GMO, I think it is going to help our country so much achieve a certain milestone, because you understand the current situation concerning the food situation in the country is not that good.
GMO was here sometimes back and was banned. We want to know exactly what was rectified to take it back. Ni nini imefanywa, GMO ikarudishwa na ilikuwa imebaniwa. Imerekebishwa nini? That is what we want to know. Imekuwa nzuri na nini na ilikuwa mbaya na nini by then?
Yes, we can say we bring in GMO seeds, GMO food, GMO that, but the main effect, unless we take care of our environment, our forests, okay, then I don't see, because what is causing all this, what is causing food shortage in the country, is being caused by lack of rains. That's all. It's not about which seeds we have or which seeds we don't have, either genetically modified or the standard ones.
As you understand, the current situation, maybe let's say in northern parts of our country, not only northern parts of our country, but many counties are facing hunger as we speak. People are dying. We just saw the other day on the television. And I think with this kind of approach, actually, we are going to produce enough food to feed our people and as well meet our economic demands.
Thanks so much, Abashemi, for those vox pop. I'm sure you had to cut them down in the interest of time. But again, now on to my panelists again this evening. Ruth, I'm going to start with you, just a quick reaction on what you've heard from the Kenyans outside there. Kenyans are crying. What are your reactions to those vox pop, to their comments and sentiments?
I think one of the person has said what has changed, because it was there before, but now it has come back. Why has it changed? And as I mentioned earlier, this thing has been there for the last 20 years. Actually, at the beginning of it is when we saw the pronouncement of the GMO. And I believe there was no proper research that had been done then. And I believe right now we have the right basis. And most of the risk have been reduced to minimum level, and it is a way that we can be able to minimize loss of human life, especially in the country. We have seen a lot of loss of life during the extended drought period. I think there's nothing as important as human life and the lives of Kenyans of Kenyans and people in this country. That is one. There's one person who has mentioned issues to do with environment. You know, very important, because Prof mentioned the issue of the weather pattern. Globally, the global warming, the issues that are coming, the weather pattern right now, things are different. So then from an environmental perspective, are we going to be bringing in something new at the expense of other things or the byproducts of the GMO farming? If you look at the studies that have been done about this whole thing, is that they have said they are more resistant to even parasites, meaning that less pesticide is going to be used. And
less, for example, what was that? Desert locust?
Exactly, yeah.
Locust invasion and the likes?
Exactly. Yeah. And a short period.
And stem borers also.
Exactly, you know. And what we are saying is that also the short period that is going to be taken to grow this food is going also, you know, we need to be stable when it comes to a food security perspective in this country, which we have not had. And it is going to be realignment. I think the pronouncement are going to bring a whole realignment in the agricultural sector.
And a paradigm shift.
Exactly. Even in our storages, you can look at the cereals board. It's something that it's not at the optimal like we used to know it in the past.
Yes.
And
this would be a lucrative deal. Farmers would queue up, farmers would plant just to go and sell the maize to the NCPB, right?
Yes. And we have seen some of these things have been neglected. I think you can remember, ukulima ni uti wa mgongo. That is a phrase that we used to be in every student's
the
Nyayo era, you know. Can we go back to our basic as Kenyans, and actually agriculture gives most people livelihood, and it minimizes a lot of rural urban migration.
So it gives livelihood and supports the economy.
Exactly. And also there is a lot of balancing, because you see when it happens there is a lot of migration to the city center. That is why we see other output of of the city. There is insecurity, there are other things because
Congestion.
a lot of people, but there are no proper
Minimal resources,
minimal resources, grabbing every resource. So I think we can balance the economy and the Kenyan at large so that you feel safe, even with the county. Actually, it's going to benefit the county government and the devolution. It has a lot of benefits, yeah.
I love how you just stamp and circumnavigate around the economic agenda of this GMO aspect. I mean, just amazing, amazing. Thanks so much for enlightening us. Prof, again, coming from a medical background and scientific background, what's your take on the Vox Pop, on the comments from the citizens on the streets of Nairobi?
I think I noted mixed reaction from the fellows. There was one who was talking about the environment, which is very important. And even without GMOs, our environment now is affected by a lot of other factors that we need to address. But the other person gave a very reasonable justification for the readmission of GMOs into this country. I know it was used in a limited way, and like my colleague has said also, that we now have some technologies. We have seen that we have laboratories that can look into the effects of some of the GMOs that are there, and then people need to rest assured on the consumption of some of these products if they are aware that the government is doing the necessary evaluation regularly, and if there is any challenge. Already at the moment, our foods, we have two issues. We have food safety and food security. We should not just look at food security, we need to look at safety. Many of our, even before GMOs, we have a lot of problems with aflatoxin, for example, in our maize products, in our wheat, in our groundnuts, in our other issues. So I want to reiterate and repeat myself and say that what we need is proper mechanisms to monitor these. For example, aflatoxin, the cause of most of aflatoxin is due to the climate change. You find during the harvest we have some rains, so the moisture content of our harvest is very high, and this is this contributes to the aflatoxin situation. So we need to look at GMOs and see what is the optimum situation where. And I think I need to just explain that GMO is actually a scientific way to improve that grain so that it can be resistant to climate. The natural grain. Yes. Okay. It can be resistant to the climate situation. It can be resistant to pesticide. It can have better nutritional value, and it can grow in a shorter time, and it can have a bigger harvest than we used to have before.
Prof, you've spoken about regulations, and there's one thing that I have taken away from this interview tonight from you, is that we need to have proper regulations in this industry, right? Even after lifting the ban. Where you're coming from, senior researcher, I mean, you've led the government entity when it comes to research and all that and giving reports. What steps, you know, regulation is wide, maybe a bit ambiguous, but again, what steps would you recommend to the government of the day to do right here, right now, after the lifting?
As I said earlier, first of all, put mechanisms in place to have very effective monitoring system, and then back up this clearance from the ban with a good research backup for evidence-based, so that we regularly keep on researching, seeing the consumption of this product, what are the good in it and what are the bad in it from our own national situation.
So should we put a regulatory body or authority to approve people who are moving into this industry? What steps do we take? Do we acquire, do we acquire the machines to counter-check some of this, for example, bacteria or whatever they're being used as additives into these grains?
Yes.
For
example, technology.
Yeah.
It's very important that we have adequate technology to be able to do that. Yeah. And take, for example, crops. Cassava, somebody was saying that with GMOs, it reduces the cyanide, which some people is actually poisonous, it kills. So with GMOs, it reduces that.
So that's beneficial.
Then the volume can increase. However, even that cassava, as tubers and others, you know, like sweet potatoes, all this can be modified. All we need is them to be able to monitor and ensure that the risk to human being is minimized.
Thank you so much for that.
Technology, laws in place, human resource are essential in this. We need people who are properly trained. We have a few universities now, by the way, that can be able to do this, but they need support. We need to give finances to these people to be able to continuously do this, so that if there is anything, we can stop it in good time.
Okay.
And if there are corrections to be done, it can be done in good time. For the betterment of the nation.
Thanks so much for that. Ruth, you've mentioned widely about this uplifting of the GMO ban, bringing in opportunities. So coming from a business advisory perspective, coming from an economic perspective, what are some of the opportunities that are lying in within this whole food security industry right now as we speak? I know Prof has mentioned a few. You mentioned that we need human resource, so that is direct employment. So besides that, for investors, what from where you're sitting, I'm sure you've just been thinking about it, what are some of the possible angles that an investor or a venture capitalist can go into and look for this whole food sector?
Oh, thank you. One of the quick win, or some of the quick win in the sector is first, the whole issue about technology and machinery. I know Prof has mentioned the issue of toxins in most of our grain, but should we be having those kind of some of this machinery that dries these grains into the right temperatures? That's a really quick win, especially if this GMO thing is going to increase productivity. That's one. Secondly, there are small sectors, and I can give an example. For example, the dairy farming, say, in the area of Kiambu County, for example. And most of who actually normally even, normally they grow their food, their fodders, you know. Those are quick win because the small subsistence, who are many actually, the subsistence farmers, they can be able to leverage on some of these things that can give them quick food, quick win for their animals, and even for the society around them, you know. And I know this government has come up with the whole issue about bottom up, and let me tell you one thing. If the common down mwananchi does not have something extra or something to see or something that can translate to food or something that can translate to the basic needs, then I think even as a country, there is no need of doing other big projects like infrastructure and other projects. And if you look at the last 20 years, and I'm going to repeat this again and again, the country has actually focused largely on infrastructure. Look at the Kibaki's government. Look at Uhuru's government. We've done a lot of infrastructure. There has been a lot of growth in the urban sector. And that is why you have seen there's also a lot of call for revenue allocations for even counties. Why? Because the money is in the city. Pesa mashinani. We have to give it back. And how many people are paying taxes for them to be returned to mashinani? We have to empower the common mwananchi in even the farthest corner of this country, whether it's Mandela, whether it's in Turkana, or whether it's Lamu. People have to, the common mwananchi, and that is the small growth. The bottom up is what is going to spur economic growth. If you remember once when President Ruth came on board, the first thing he said was about the fertilizer, the cheaper,
the subsidized, the 50%,
fertilizer. And I think if you look at if you closely look at where he's coming from, I think agriculture, and I know he was a Minister of Agriculture sometimes back, I see like he still has a very big heart for the agriculture. And this is one of the things that if converted, there is a lot of byproduct that will come from it, whether it's milk, the cost of prices, the cost of food going up, the cost of commodities, even things like milk, eggs and all that. All those which we some which we even import,
yeah, true,
from other countries. You know, Kenya, if things, and I think one of the things that I'm going to say is also the issue of implementation, where it's where rubber meets the road. And implementation matrix is where mostly the government goes off, like Prof has said about the issue about resource allocation. What is the funds that are going to be allocated? What are they going to be used for? What do they have a proper, now that the pronouncement has come, is there a proper
structure where the resources can just come in and plug into the existing structure?
And a whole implementation, you know, roadmap. This is where we are. This is where we need to go. This is how we shall spread this gospel or this word to everyone in the country. That implementation, and the cartel, a cartel goes to come and ensure that the funds don't go to the people who are supposed to. And that is where Prof is coming and say we need a proper plan and a regulator that can be able to ensure that this is being done the right way, because the human life and the safety of human life is at the center of it. But if things are done properly, and communication, because one of the things you can see with common mwananchi, they know GMO is bad, just the way we were being told those long time ago that using a phone call, you'll get cancer. But what are the misconceptions? So that the common mwananchi can have the rightful information. They be informed because they are the ones who are going to implement the project down there. So all those misconceptions, the use of the whole national government, the county government, no one should be left behind. And that we will be keen, or common mwananchi will be keen to see how this one is cascaded from the president all the way down.
So you say the opportunities, one, you're looking at technology.
Yes.
Two, you're looking at agriculture in its own self, in its actual sense, people growing crops. Three, you say looking at potentially livestock and dairy products and the byproduct that comes with it, right? And the ultimate one is the food security, right, in this country. So those are some of the opportunities that we should be looking out to.
And the spurring of economic growth. Just those activities will spur.
Those activities. So those are the opportunities within it. Interesting. Prof, in the interest of time, allow me just to come to you again and give us your parting shot again. I mean, you've mentioned widely on one, the regulations that needs to be put in place and the steps that the government needs to take. Of course, coming from where Ruth has said, I think one of the things is to put more investments into KEMRI and now to conduct proper research and show correlation, and even the future actions now will be based on facts, right?
Yes. Thank you. I think one of the things that I would say is that we need to go back, like Ruth said in the beginning, that agriculture is the spinal cord of this nation. And we need to rebuild the structures in agriculture, and even job opportunities can be created through proper agricultural systems. And now that we want to go into the GMOs, we are saying that people should rest assured that it is safe to have this when the government puts the right mechanisms in place and chooses the geographical areas and chooses the right crop for different areas. We have big chunks of land that is not being utilized because it's not ideal for all types of plants or something. So we need to look at the relevance in terms of which crop can be, so we have diversity of our agricultural produce. And then we also have the social capital. Social capital is the engagement of the people to be able to, the information Ruth has mentioned. People need to be educated. Right now we're getting information, it's risky, it's whatever, and the concerns by the civil servant society or whatever is justified, but they need to be assured that when the mechanisms are in place, then the safety aspect of the food security is looked into, and that other than just rushing into it because people are dying, we don't want them to survive with their own foods somehow. So it is important to have those mechanisms in place, and we need to educate the people so that they can accept GMOs, and GMOs shall be used in where we can avoid GMOs, we avoid them. Geographical areas. Where we need to use them, then we can. Where we have sufficient rainfalls, we can use our systems. But the challenge also is when we introduce this, it will be very difficult to control. However, I feel like we should put mechanisms to control this, and people should be educated to accept so that we can move forward in Kenya.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, amazing. Thanks so much, Prof. Ruth, I mean, I just saw you nodding and nodding to the wisdom that was being used by Professor right there. Would you mind just giving us your parting shot as well, Ruth?
I'm happy that some of these things are happening now. If I look at the last financial year, I think the allocation of the budget was around between 60 to 70 billion to the agricultural sector. It was sad to see the agricultural sector in the last 2 decades really dwindle and really go to really at its bottom. My hope is that this is the awakening. This is a time that everyone at the any county will be empowered, and that there is going now to be a lot of activities down there, so that there is not going to be migration, the panic, and the lack, and especially the wasted youth. The many youth who have a lot of capacity, they want to do a lot of things, but they are unemployed. And agriculture is one of the areas that can create a lot of employment. So if this is done in the right way, if the implementation is done in the right way, if there's going to be a lot of monitoring and evaluation of how things are going to be, and we can maybe at the end of another 1 year or 2, we can be told how it's performing, then I think they'll have done a lot of good things for this country, and by taking care of especially the young people.
Wow, wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Ruth. Thanks so much, Professor Karama. A good friend of mine on the gallery, a long time ago, used to do Ticket to Slumber. When the show is done, I just finish with the Ticket to Slumber, giving people a ticket that they can use to go all the way to Slumberland. Yeah? And a good friend of mine just asked me to do Ticket to Slumber because it's been long since I did it. But again, thank you so much. But before I thank you, well, just need to do the Ticket to Slumber. And on my hand, I'm holding a phone. So, Prof and Dr. Ruth, if I ask you what's the color of the phone, from there I'm holding it, what color are you seeing?
Black and purple.
Black, and I can even turn it on the camera. I mean, what's the color of the phone? It's black, right? But what if I change it? So if I ask you what's the color of my phone right now?
It's pink or purple.
It's pink, right? And even here. So if you ask Dr. Ruth, who is seated here next to me, what's the color of the phone? He says
Black.
Black, right?
Yeah.
And the person who's on the other side of the camera, he'll say it is
Pink.
Is any of you wrong?
No.
I mean, you're saying what you saw, right?
Yes.
And he's also saying what he saw, right? Precisely. But again, if you take yourself out of the situation and have an overview of the phone, you'll realize the front is black and the back is pink, right? So similarly, the GMO debate has spurred a lot of confusion and a lot of opinions, right? Based on various positions that we might have been fixated on. But again, if you remove ourselves from the situation that we are in right now, if our mindset is blinded by our respective positions or our biasness, just remove ourselves from the situation and look at it all round, have an overview look of the whole GMO perspective, then at least you'll appreciate the different opinions from different quarters. Now you'll be able to objectively look at the pros, objectively look at the cons. And that is our ticket to slumber tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Professor Mohamed Karama.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ruth, Kinyanjui. I mean, it was a pleasure having you guys on the set tonight. And thank you so much, our viewer back at home, for keeping us company. I hope you've benefited as much as I have benefited right here tonight on Live Real Talk Show. Until next week, same place, same time. My name is Faisal Kassim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
قال تعالى في محكم تنزيله بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Ninasaha kutoka pwani.
هذا الدين قال الله قال الرسول قال الصحابة هم أولو العرفان. انتهى.
Ili kuongoza kwenye njia iliyonyoka.
Sikizeni hadithi hii ya Mtume alayhi salatu wasalam.
Hakuna atakayeweza kumfungia mtu mlango ambaye Mwenyezi Mungu aliyemfungulia.
Kuimarisha imani yako.
Thabbit qulubana ala dinik wa ala ta'atik.
Ungana na mashekh wetu kutoka pwani kwenye mimbar.
Mimbar zinamwakilisha Mtume sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Ni Jumamosi na wakati saa 3 usiku katika Horizon TV, runinga